This is HOA Violation Vault. I saved every receipt and every timestamp. I am standing in the parking lot of my townhouse at the Villas at Glacier Point in Albany, New York, and Carol Young is screaming at me about tire tracks in the snow. She is holding a metal shovel with a bright red handle like it is a piece of courtroom evidence, and her voice is echoing off the brick facades hard enough that I can see curtains moving in the windows around us. "You damaged common property," she shouts, "and I am calling management and I am going to be dramatic about it. I am a property appraiser, so I know exactly what an HOA lien does to a sale, and I am trying to close on this place in 6 weeks." Carol is the fines and enforcement coordinator, which means she is the one who decides what gets logged, what gets escalated, and who gets put on the agenda at the monthly meeting. I moved here 2 years ago because the price was good and the commute was short, and I learned pretty fast that the Villas at Glacier Point Homeowners Association runs on public shaming and theatrics at meetings to intimidate anyone who questions them. The tire tracks she is yelling about are from last night, when I backed out of my driveway after the plow came through. The common strip between the parking lot and the sidewalk had 4 inches of fresh snow on it, and my tires left 2 faint ruts when I reversed. Carol is treating it like I drove a bulldozer through a flower bed. "This is property damage," she says, "and the association has a zero-tolerance winter enforcement policy." I ask her what policy she is talking about, because I have read the covenants twice and there is nothing in there about tire tracks and snow. She ignores the question and starts taking pictures with her phone, circling the ruts with the toe of her boot like a crime scene investigator. "I can put you on the agenda and keep you there," she says, which is the second time this month she has said that to me. The first time was when she caught me using a snowblower on the front walk at 6 in the morning and told me I was violating quiet hours. I am wearing a red puffer jacket and a red winter beanie, and my breath is fogging in the cold. Carol is in a black belted wool coat and a blue knit hat, and she has a stack of chalk sticks in her coat pocket that she treats like official tools. She pulls one out now and draws a circle in the snow around one of the tire tracks, then steps back and takes another photo. I ask her if she is planning to fine me for this, and she says the fine schedule will be determined after the compliance review. That is HOA code for whatever number she feels like writing down. The HOA claims sidewalks must be cleared within a strict window after snowfall and the clock is running, but nobody can tell me what the actual window is because it is not written anywhere. Carol has been sending texts to the neighborhood group chat all winter about emergency enforcement and heightened scrutiny, but when I asked the management company for a copy of the winter rules, they said they would get back to me and never did. Carol stands up and brushes snow off her gloves. She tells me I have 24 hours to submit a remediation plan in writing, or the violation will be escalated to collections. I ask her what remediation means for tire tracks that are going to melt in 2 days, and she says that is not her problem. She starts walking back toward the main clubhouse, and I notice she is leaving footprints all over the same common strip she just accused me of damaging. I call after her and point that out, and she turns around and says her footprints are incidental, but my tire tracks are vehicular damage. The logic is insane, but I know arguing in the parking lot is not going to help me. I take my own photos of the chalk circle and the tire ruts, and I take a video of Carol walking away with her boot prints everywhere, just in case I need it later. When I get back inside, I pull up the HOA group chat on my phone and scroll back through 2 months of Carol's posts. Every single one is about enforcement. Reminder: sidewalks must be clear within the compliance window. Reminder: snow piles must not obstruct sightlines. Reminder: ice melt products must be HOA-approved brands only. There is no actual policy document attached to any of it, just Carol's voice setting rules as she goes. I screenshot a dozen of them and save them in a folder. Then I call my neighbor Tom, who has lived here for 7 years and is the only person on the block who does not seem afraid of Carol. He is a calm homeowner who brings the actual printed covenants to every meeting and reads them out loud when someone tries to invent a rule, and he has been a thorn in the board's side since the day he moved in. I tell him what just happened, and he laughs and says Carol has been on a winter enforcement crusade since Thanksgiving. She is trying to pad the collections numbers before the annual budget vote, he says, because the board wants to raise dues, and they need to show the association is solvent. Tom tells me I should file a formal appeal in writing and demand a hearing, because Carol is making up rules and hoping nobody fights back. He says the actual covenants only require reasonable efforts to keep walkways clear, and there is no mention of tire tracks, remediation plans, or vehicular damage to common snow. I thank him and hang up, and I start drafting an email to the management company. I keep it short and factual. I explain what happened, I attach the photos, and I request a copy of the written winter policy that Carol is enforcing. I also ask for a hearing date if the violation is going to be escalated. I send it off and I feel a little better, but I know Carol is not going to let this go quietly. The next morning, I wake up to another 4 inches of snow. The plow has been through again, and there is a fresh ridge of heavy, wet snow across the end of every driveway in the complex. I grab my shovel and start clearing my walk, and I am about halfway done when Carol appears at the edge of my driveway. She is holding a clipboard this time, and she is wearing the same black coat and blue hat. She tells me I am in violation of the snow pile placement guidelines because I am pushing snow onto the common strip instead of keeping it on my own property. I stop shoveling and look at her. I ask her where else I am supposed to put it, since my driveway is 10 feet wide and the snow has to go somewhere. She says that is my problem to solve, not hers, and if I cannot comply, I should hire an HOA-approved vendor to do it for me. She flips a page on her clipboard and shows me a list of 3 companies, all with Albany addresses and phone numbers I do not recognize. I ask her if the HOA gets a kickback from these vendors, and her face goes red. She says that is a slanderous accusation, and she is adding insubordination to my file. I do not say anything else. I just go back to shoveling, and I push the snow onto the strip anyway because there is literally nowhere else for it to go. Carol stays there for another minute taking notes, and then she walks away. I finish the driveway, and I go back inside, and I find an email waiting for me from the management company. It is a complaint log entry that is obviously written in Carol's voice. The entry says I have failed to remediate prior violations, I have created new violations during the remediation period, and I have made disparaging remarks about HOA-approved vendors. It says I am being fined $250 for the tire tracks, and another $250 for improper snow pile placement, and if I do not pay within 10 days, the matter will be referred to collections, even though the fees are disputed and under appeal. I forward the email to Tom, and he calls me back within 5 minutes. He is furious. He says Carol has been doing this to 3 other homeowners this winter, and nobody has pushed back because they are scared of liens and legal fees. He tells me the board does not actually have the authority to send anything to collections without a formal hearing, and the management company knows it, but they let Carol run wild because she does the dirty work for them. He says I need to go to the management office in person and demand the winter policy, and I need to do it today before Carol escalates this any further. I agree, and I tell him I will go this afternoon. The management office is in a strip mall 2 miles from the complex, tucked between a dry cleaner and a pizza place. I walk in, and there is a woman at the front desk who looks annoyed the second I say I am from the villas at Glacier Point. I tell her I need a copy of the winter snow removal policy that the HOA is enforcing, and she says she will check with the property manager. She disappears into a back office, and I can hear muffled voices. After 5 minutes, a man in a polo shirt comes out and introduces himself as the property manager. He has a folder in his hand, and he looks nervous. I ask him for the winter policy, and he says the board has not finalized the written version yet, but they are operating under emergency guidelines approved by the president. I ask him to show me the emergency guidelines, and he says they are not available for distribution because they are still in draft form. I ask him how Carol is enforcing rules that do not exist in writing, and he says the board has discretion to interpret the covenants as needed. I pull out my phone and I start recording. I repeat the question. I ask him how the HOA can fine me for violating a policy that does not exist in writing and has not been distributed to homeowners. He freezes. He says he cannot comment on pending violations, and he asks me to stop recording. I do not stop. I ask him if Carol is authorized to make up rules on the spot, and he says Carol is the fines and enforcement coordinator and she has the board's confidence. I ask him if the board knows Carol is threatening to send people to collections without a hearing, and he says I need to direct my questions to the board president. I thank him for his time, and I walk out. The whole exchange is on video, and I can see his face when he realized he could not produce the policy. That is going into my evidence folder. That night, I get a text from Tom. He says there is a special board meeting tomorrow night at the clubhouse, and Carol has added me to the agenda under new enforcement actions. He says I should come and bring everything I have, because this is my chance to fight back in public. I tell him I will be there, and I spend the rest of the evening organizing my photos, videos, and emails into a timeline. I also print out 3 sections of the covenants that contradict everything Carol has been saying. I am not a lawyer, but I know how to build a case, and I know how to show someone is lying. The next evening, I walk into the clubhouse at 6:30. The meeting does not start until 7, but I want to get a seat near the front. Tom is already there, and he has a stack of documents with him. Carol is sitting at the board table with the president and 2 other board members, and she is shuffling papers like she is preparing for trial. The metal shovel with a bright red handle is leaning against the wall behind her, and I assume she brought it as a prop. The room fills up slowly. Maybe 20 people show up, which is a decent turnout for a weeknight in winter. Most of them are here because they are scared Carol is going to come after them next. If you are enjoying this chaos, hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss the next HOA nightmare story. The meeting starts with routine business. The treasurer reads a budget report, and the president talks about landscaping bids for spring. Then Carol stands up and says she has enforcement updates. She pulls out her clipboard and she starts reading off violations. 3 homeowners for snow removal delays. 2 homeowners for improper ice melt usage. 1 homeowner for unauthorized snow pile placement. And then she gets to me. She says I have failed to remediate vehicular damage to common property, I have created additional violations during the remediation period, and I have made slanderous accusations against HOA-approved vendors. She says the fines total $500, and if I do not pay within 10 days, the matter will be referred to collections, and a lien will be filed against my property. I raise my hand, and the president recognizes me. I stand up and I say I would like to respond. Carol tries to interrupt, but the president tells her to let me speak. I pull out my phone and I open the video I took at the management office. I say I went to the management office yesterday and asked for a copy of the winter policy Carol is enforcing, and the property manager admitted there is no written policy. I play the video out loud, and the room goes silent. You can hear the property manager saying the policy is in draft form and not available for distribution. I pause the video and I look at Carol. I ask her how she can fine people for violating a rule that does not exist. Her face goes red again, and she says the board has emergency authority under the covenants. Tom stands up and says he has the covenants right here, and there is no such thing as emergency authority for snow removal. He starts reading the section out loud, and it is exactly what he told me. Reasonable efforts to keep walkways clear. Nothing about tire tracks. Nothing about remediation plans. Nothing about vehicular damage. Carol stands up and slams her hand on the table. She says the board has always had the authority to interpret the covenants, and if I do not like it, I can take it up with the HOA attorney. I say that is a great idea, and I would love to see the attorney explain how you can enforce a policy that does not exist. The president looks uncomfortable. He says the board will take my concerns under advisement and they will revisit the winter enforcement guidelines at the next meeting. I say that is not good enough, because Carol has already fined me $500 for violations that are not real. I say I am formally appealing the fines, and I am requesting a hearing with the HOA attorney present. The president says he will schedule a hearing, and in the meantime, the fines are suspended pending review. Carol looks like she is about to explode, but she sits down and does not say anything else. After the meeting, Tom catches up with me in the parking lot. He is grinning. He says that was the first time he has ever seen Carol speechless, and it was worth the price of admission. I tell him I am not done yet, because I know Carol is going to retaliate, and I need to be ready. He says he has been collecting evidence on Carol for 2 years, and if I need anything, I should let him know. I thank him and I head home, and I feel like I just won the first round. But the next morning, I wake up to find my gate keypad access is not working. I punch in my code 3 times, and the gate stays locked. I call the management office, and the woman at the desk says my access was suspended due to outstanding violations. I tell her the fines are under appeal and the president suspended them last night, and she says she will check with Carol. I wait on hold for 10 minutes, and when she comes back, she says Carol confirmed the suspension is correct, and my access will be restored when the fines are paid. I hang up and I call Tom, and he tells me to document everything. I take a video of myself trying to use the keypad, and I take screenshots of the call log showing I tried to reach the management office. Then I drive around to the visitor entrance and I go in that way. That afternoon, I get an email from Carol. It is long and formal, and it is clearly written to sound like a legal document. It says the board has reviewed my appeal, and they have determined the fines are valid and enforceable. It says my gate access will remain suspended until I pay the full amount, plus a $50 administrative fee for the suspension. It says if I do not comply within 5 days, the matter will be referred to collections, and the HOA will pursue all available remedies, including a lien on my property. I forward the email to Tom, and I also forward it to the HOA attorney, whose contact information is listed at the bottom of every board meeting agenda. I write a short note to the attorney. I explain that I appealed the fines at the meeting, the president suspended them pending review, and now Carol is threatening collections anyway. I ask the attorney to clarify whether Carol has the authority to override the board president. 2 days later, I get a reply from the attorney. It is short and carefully worded, but the message is clear. The attorney says Carol does not have unilateral authority to suspend access or refer matters to collections without board approval, and any enforcement actions taken during an active appeal are not enforceable. He says he has advised the board to restore my access immediately and to halt all collection efforts pending the outcome of the hearing. He also says the board will be conducting a review of the winter enforcement procedures to ensure compliance with the governing documents. I forward the email to the management office, and within an hour, my gate access is restored. I also forward it to Tom, and he replies with 3 fireworks emojis. But I know Carol is not done. She has spent 2 years building a reputation as the enforcer, and she is not going to let one attorney email destroy that. I start checking the HOA group chat more carefully, and I notice a pattern. Carol has been coordinating with the snow removal vendors to report violations. She posts a message at 6 in the morning saying the plow is coming through, and then 2 hours later, one of the vendors sends her photos of driveways that have not been cleared yet. Carol logs them as violations and sends out notices the same day. It is a trap. The vendors are working with her to create violations so she can rack up fines. I screenshot the entire chat thread and I save it in my evidence folder. Then Tom sends me a text that changes everything. He says he was going through some old board meeting minutes and he found a spreadsheet attachment from 3 months ago. It is a target list. The spreadsheet has 15 addresses, and mine is one of them. Each address has a column for violation type, estimated fine amount, and collection probability. My address is highlighted in yellow, and the notes say high-value property, motivated seller, likely to pay. Tom says the board has been using the winter enforcement blitz as a revenue strategy, and Carol has been targeting homeowners who are trying to sell because they are the most vulnerable. I feel sick. I forward the spreadsheet to the HOA attorney with a short note. I say this looks like a coordinated effort to generate fines from homeowners who are under financial pressure, and I ask if this is legal. The attorney replies within an hour. He says the spreadsheet raises serious concerns about selective enforcement and potential breach of fiduciary duty, and he is recommending the board halt all enforcement actions pending a full review. He also says I should consider filing a formal complaint with the board and requesting a full audit of the fines and collections process. That night, I draft a formal complaint. I attach the spreadsheet, the group chat screenshots, the video from the management office, and the email from Carol threatening collections during an active appeal. I send it to the board president, the HOA attorney, and the management company. I also send a copy to Tom, who says he is going to bring it up at the next meeting. I feel like I have done everything I can, but I know the real fight is still coming. The hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks later. It is supposed to be a private session with the board and the attorney, but Carol insists on being there because she is the one who filed the violations. I arrive at the clubhouse at 6, and Tom is waiting for me outside. He says he is coming in as my witness, and he has a folder full of documents that are going to make Carol very uncomfortable. We walk in together, and the board is already seated at the table. Carol is sitting in the corner with the metal shovel with a bright red handle leaning against the wall beside her, and she is glaring at me like I just insulted her family. The HOA attorney is sitting at the far end of the table with a legal pad and a pen, and he looks like he would rather be anywhere else. The president starts by reading the complaint I filed. He summarizes the allegations, selective enforcement, coordination with vendors, targeting vulnerable homeowners, and threatening collections during an active appeal. He asks Carol to respond. Carol stands up and says everything she did was within her authority as fines and enforcement coordinator, and the board gave her full discretion to interpret the covenants. She says the spreadsheet was just a planning tool, and there is nothing wrong with identifying homeowners who are likely to comply with fines. She says I am making a big deal out of routine enforcement, and if I do not like the rules, I should move. Tom stands up and says he has a question. He pulls out the covenants and he asks Carol to show him the section that gives her discretion to invent rules. Carol flips through her clipboard and she says it is implied under the board's general authority. Tom says implied authority is not the same as written authority, and the covenants clearly state that any rule changes require a vote of the membership. He reads the section out loud, and the attorney nods. The president looks at Carol and asks her if she consulted the attorney before implementing the winter enforcement guidelines. Carol says she did not think she needed to, because the board president told her to handle it. The president goes pale. He says he never authorized her to create new rules. He just asked her to remind homeowners to clear their walks. Carol's face goes red, and she says that is not what he told her in November. The attorney clears his throat and says he has reviewed the complaint and the evidence, and he has serious concerns about the enforcement process. He says the spreadsheet suggests the board may have violated its fiduciary duty by targeting specific homeowners for financial reasons, and the coordination with vendors raises questions about conflicts of interest. He says the fines against me are not enforceable because the underlying policy does not exist in writing, and the gate access suspension was improper. He says the board needs to issue a formal apology, refund any fines I have paid, and halt all enforcement actions until they adopt a written winter policy that complies with the covenants. The president nods and says he agrees, and he will bring a motion to the next board meeting to adopt the attorney's recommendations. Carol interrupts and says this is ridiculous. She says I am wasting everyone's time with a frivolous complaint, and the board should be supporting her, not undermining her. She says I can put you on the agenda and keep you there, which is the same line she used on me in the parking lot 2 months ago. I pull out my phone and I open the video I have been holding on to since that first confrontation. I did not stop her, because I wanted her on record. The video starts playing, and you can hear Carol screaming at me about tire tracks. You can hear her say I am calling management and I am going to be dramatic about it. You can hear her say I can put you on the agenda and keep you there. The room goes silent. The attorney takes notes. The president looks at Carol and asks her if she threatened me with retaliation. Carol says it was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. The attorney says it sounds like harassment, and the board should consider whether Carol is fit to continue in her role. I play the clip out loud in the meeting so Carol cannot talk over it. The president stops her halfway through and says he has heard enough. He says the board is going to vote on whether to remove Carol from the fines and enforcement coordinator position, and the vote will happen at the next board meeting. Carol stands up and grabs the metal shovel with a bright red handle, and for a second I think she is going to swing it, but she just storms out of the room. The door slams behind her, and the sound echoes in the silence. The attorney turns to me and says he recommends I file a formal harassment complaint with the management company, because Carol's behavior goes beyond enforcement and into personal retaliation. He says the board is going to conduct a full audit of the fines and collections process, and any homeowner who was targeted on the spreadsheet will be notified and given an opportunity to appeal. He also says the board is going to adopt a new enforcement policy that requires written notice, a hearing process, and board approval before any fines are sent to collections. I thank him, and I thank the president, and I walk out with Tom. Outside, Tom is laughing. He says that was the most satisfying thing he has seen in 7 years of living here, and he is going to frame the look on Carol's face when I played the video. I tell him I am just glad it is over, but I know it is not really over until the board votes and the new policy is in place. Tom says the vote is going to be unanimous, because nobody wants to be on the wrong side of a lawsuit. I hope he is right. 2 weeks later, the board holds its regular monthly meeting. Tom and I are both there, along with maybe 30 other homeowners who have heard about what happened. The room is packed. Carol is not there, which is the first sign that things have changed. The president starts the meeting by announcing that the board has completed its review of the winter enforcement process, and they have determined that several actions taken by the former fines and enforcement coordinator were not consistent with the governing documents. He says the board is adopting a new enforcement policy that requires written rules, advance notice, and a hearing process before any fines are imposed. He says the board is also refunding all fines that were assessed under the winter enforcement guidelines, because those guidelines were never properly adopted. He reads my name off a list along with 6 other homeowners, and he says we will all receive refund checks within 30 days. Then he announces that Carol Young has resigned from her position as fines and enforcement coordinator, effective immediately. The room erupts in applause. The president waits for the noise to die down, and then he says the board has also received a letter from the city of Albany warning the HOA to stop interfering with municipal snow removal routes. Apparently, Carol had been calling the city public works department to complain about plow schedules, and the city finally told her to back off or they would start fining the HOA for obstruction. The board is issuing a formal apology to the city, and they are implementing new procedures to ensure the HOA does not interfere with public services. The HOA attorney forces a reversal to reduce liability, and Karen gets stripped of access to the portal admin tools. Tom leans over and whispers that Carol's resignation was not voluntary. He says the board gave her a choice between resigning quietly or being removed for cause, and she chose to resign so it would not go on the official record. I ask him how he knows that, and he says the board secretary is his friend and she told him everything. I do not care how it happened. I am just glad it is over. After the meeting, the president pulls me aside and apologizes personally. He says the board should have been paying more attention to what Carol was doing, and they let her operate without oversight for too long. He says they are committed to making sure it does not happen again, and if I have any other concerns, I should bring them directly to him. I thank him and I tell him I am just glad the new policy is in place. He shakes my hand and says he hopes I will stay in the community, because people like me and Tom are what make the neighborhood work. I tell him I am still planning to sell, because the whole experience has left a bad taste, but I appreciate the apology. A week later, I get a refund check in the mail for $500, along with a formal letter from the board apologizing for the improper enforcement actions. I deposit the check and I file the letter with the rest of my evidence, just in case I ever need it. I also get a message from the realtor saying the disclosure requirements are clear, and the HOA has confirmed there are no outstanding violations or liens against my property. The sale can move forward without any issues. Tom texts me a screenshot from the HOA group chat. Someone posted a message saying they heard Carol has moved out of the complex entirely, and her townhouse is going up for sale next month. Tom adds a comment, "Karma." I reply with a thumbs up. I do not feel bad for her. She spent 2 years terrorizing people, and she finally got caught. The winter drags on, and the snow keeps coming, but the HOA does not send me any more violation notices. The new enforcement coordinator is a retired teacher named Linda, and she sends out friendly reminders instead of threats. She posts the actual written policy in the group chat, and it is reasonable. Clear your walks within 24 hours of snowfall. Use common sense about where to put the snow. Do not block fire lanes. That is it. No tire track inspections, no remediation plans, no vendor kickbacks, just normal rules that normal people can follow. In March, I close on the sale of my townhouse. The buyer is a young couple who are moving to Albany for work, and they ask me what the HOA is like. I tell them it is better than it used to be, but they should read the covenants carefully and show up to the meetings. I also tell them to watch out for anyone who tries to invent rules on the spot, because that is how the problems start. They thank me for the advice, and I hand over the keys. On my last day in the complex, I run into Tom in the parking lot. He is shoveling his walk, and he waves me over. He says he heard I closed on the sale, and he is sorry to see me go. I tell him I am glad I fought back, because if I had not, Carol would still be running the place like her personal fiefdom. Tom says the new board is talking about term limits and recalls, so maybe things will keep getting better. I tell him I hope so, and I thank him for all his help. He says anytime, and if I ever want to come back and tell war stories, he will buy me a beer. I drive out through the main gate for the last time, and I do not look back. The villas at Glacier Point Homeowners Association is someone else's problem now. I learned a lot about HOAs in the 2 years I lived there. I learned that the rules only matter if people are willing to enforce them fairly. I learned that a single person with a clipboard and a grudge can make life miserable for everyone. And I learned that sometimes the only way to win is to document everything, stay calm, and force the people in charge to follow their own rules. A few months later, Tom sends me a link to a local news article. The headline is, "City of Albany Warns HOA Over Snow Route Interference." The article says the Villas at Glacier Point Homeowners Association was issued a formal warning after repeated complaints about interference with municipal snow removal operations, and the city is threatening fines if the behavior continues. The article quotes the board president saying the association has implemented new procedures and is committed to working cooperatively with the city. There is no mention of Carol by name, but I know exactly who caused the problem. I text Tom and ask if Carol ever sold her place. He says she did, and she moved to a condo in Saratoga Springs, where there is no HOA. I reply that the people of Saratoga Springs have no idea what is coming. Tom sends back a laughing emoji and says maybe she learned her lesson. I doubt it, but it is not my problem anymore. The whole experience taught me to trust my instincts. When Carol started inventing rules and threatening me with fines, I knew something was wrong, but I did not know how far it went until I started digging. The spreadsheet was the smoking gun, The coordination with the vendors was the proof. The video was the insurance, and the attorney was the hammer that forced the board to act. I am glad I fought back, because if I had not, I would have paid $500 for tire tracks in the snow, and Carol would have kept doing it to the next person, and the next, and the next. I also learned that HOAs are only as good as the people running them. The villas at Glacier Point had decent covenants, but the board let Carol run wild because it was easier than confronting her. Once the attorney and the city got involved, the board had no choice but to fix the problem. That is how change happens. You cannot just complain in private. You have to go on the record, you have to bring evidence, and you have to force the people in charge to follow the rules they claim to enforce. I do not miss living in an HOA, but I am glad I stood up for myself. Karen's smug smile vanishes when the room turns on her, and that moment at the hearing when I played the video was worth every hour I spent collecting evidence. The HOA attorney forces a reversal to reduce liability, and Karen gets stripped of access to the portal admin tools. A documented appeal that overturns the decision on the record is exactly what I needed to protect my sale and my sanity. If you ever find yourself in an HOA fight, here is my advice. Document everything. Take photos, take videos, save every email and text. Read the covenants and know what they actually say. Find an ally who will back you up. Do not back down just because someone has a clipboard and a loud voice. And if the board will not listen, go to the attorney, go to the city, go to whoever has the power to force them to follow their own rules. It worked for me, and it can work for you. I moved to a rental house on the other side of Albany, and there is no HOA. I have a landlord, and if something breaks, I call him and he fixes it. There are no meetings, no fines, no enforcement coordinators, and no one with a metal shovel trying to make my life difficult. It is boring, and it is wonderful. I will never voluntarily live in an HOA again. The only reason I bought the townhouse in the first place was because I thought I was getting a good deal, and I learned the hard way that a low price usually comes with hidden costs. The last time I heard from Tom, he said the board is still cleaning up the mess Carol left behind. They found more spreadsheets with other homeowners targeted for enforcement, and they are issuing refunds across the board. The management company fired the property manager who could not produce the winter policy, and they hired someone new who actually reads the covenants. Linda, the new enforcement coordinator, is doing a great job, and nobody is complaining. The HOA is boring again, which is exactly what it should be. I do not know what happened to Carol after she moved out. I do not care. She made her choices, and she lived with the consequences. I made my choices, and I came out ahead. That is all that matters. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.